Hi everyone, it's Jerry. Let's have a look at a game that was played on March 10th, 1957. This was played in New York at the Manhattan Chess Club. Game 2 of 2 from this mini exhibition match between 14-year-old Bobby Fischer, playing on the white end, and Max Euwe. This game was unknown for quite some time, unpublished for over 50 years, and it wasn't until Frank Brady came around and shared this game with us. Frank Brady is the author of the book Endgame, which is a biography of Bobby Fischer. And in his research for the book, he found Fischer's score sheet for this game. So we have him to thank for sharing this game with us. So let's dive in and see how it develops. We have on board a Roy Lopez, and to be a bit more exact, we're working with an open system, knight takes e4. Closed would be bishop e7, where the files go unchanged, but here, we're now working with a half-opened e-file, and white wants to open it up some more. Very sensible. White king is safe, black's king is still in the center, b5, bishop b3, and black is not getting greedy here, capturing on d4. You could be sure the knight and the king will come under some heavy fire fast. So, some emphasis on development. d5. White now regains the pawn, and something more is happening with this last capture. The structures have changed. White has a 4-3 majority on the king side, and the same story for black on the queen side. From here, some defense of d5. It was under fire. White opens a square for the bishop. It will not be hunted. And after bishop e7, white challenges the strongest black piece, the one that's in white's house. From here, black castles, move 10. Now, one of the sharper continuations instead of castles is knight c5, and after bishop c2, d4. Things get really sharp with this sequence. But we go down a much more positional path in this game. Castles, queen e2, insisting that this knight leave. It does at this moment, knight c5. And we do not have bishop c2 because once more d4 would hit. And it would be that much more effective, that much more threatening, let's say, because d3 would also be a threat with a fork now that the queen is on e2 instead of the home square. So what does Fischer do? He makes sure d4 is not a move at all. Knight d4. At the same time, this is clearing the way for white's majority. The f-pawn is now free to move. Ideally, white would love to be able to establish an e5, f5 pawn duo. Okay, first things first, knight takes bishop. White simply recaptures with the second-ranked knight at this stage. What caught my attention at this moment is, can't white take the knight on c6 with the fork and win a piece? This is not the case. This would not be the case because black would have an in-between move taking the bishop, and then the knight is on the queen. So we have a simple recapture on b3. The bishop's eyes are opened up, and on this move 13, queen to d7, defending the knight. Something that's especially important to note, I already drew some attention to the majorities. If you don't already describe majorities as healthy or unhealthy, it'd probably be a good idea to start doing that. Because black can very easily find himself with an unhealthy majority if not careful. So for example, if you're playing as black now and capturing the knight, white would recapture with the pawn. And black would now be working with an unhealthy structure. Black would never be able to successfully get in the move c5. Knight is there, pawn is there, the bishop will be there, rook will be there. Forget about it. This is a half-dead pawn. Okay, black understands this and says, no way, I'm not giving you a great grip over the c5 square. Queen d7, knights are exchanged, and now bishop e3, focusing on the c5 square. If black or excuse me, if white can maintain control over the c5 square, even if with a piece, that would mean the majority is unhealthy for black. So there's something you really need to be aware of. This position can turn into a strong knight versus a bad bishop in a blink. I'm not saying this is the greatest, dummy move to be sharing with you, but suppose the queen goes here on black's next move. This would be a wonderful opportunity for white to do what? Force a dark square bishop exchange and establish a knight on c5. It's going nowhere. Queen could defend, pawn can defend. This is one of those positions you would see in a book titled, or in a chapter titled Superior Minor Piece, or Good Knight versus Bad Bishop. Something to steer clear of playing as black. Must avoid that at all costs. In the game, what do we have? Queen c4. Fischer ducks. No queen exchange for Team Black. c5 hits. So there's a bit of a timing issue with black's last move. Given one more move, black will be there in time to secure c5, but Fischer now comes up with a 5-move sequence that in the end nets a pawn. If you'd like to pause the video and work out how exactly this is done, feel free to do that. Okay, here we go. The move played in the game. Knight a5. Not too many options with the black queen. Queen h4. And now knight c6. So the threat here is to deflect the queen away from defending the bishop and just pick up the bishop. So black adds some defense with the reliable piece, the rook. Fischer gives the queen a kick. What white wants to do is take the bishop and not have the queen recapture and defend c5. So g3, only now take the bishop, and then take on c5. At the end of it, what do we have? Fischer's up a pawn. But needs to be careful, because we have an opposite color bishop's position, and with the move g3, guess what color squares have been weakened? Light squares. To be very careful now. The bishop slipping in here, queen there, before you know it, game over on g2. First things first, rook is under fire, counter punch, and black just drops back to a nice, secure square. You could go to d6, but I imagine part of the reasoning that goes into the move bishop d4 is to cut out any possibility for rook c4 and the rook, kind of drifting quickly towards the king side. Not sure what great square it would have, but you certainly rule that out, this idea of pivoting on c4 and having those possibilities towards the king side. Okay, after bishop d4, what do we have? Bishop g4 in the game. I questioned at this stage, isn't this a wonderful opportunity for black to play bishop h3 and then queen f3? I mean, what would you do if the bishop goes to h3? There's only one good defensive move here for white. If you'd like to, pause the video, see if you can figure it out. Okay, if bishop h3 instead of the move bishop g4 in the game, the best move here is queen d1. Addressing this threat, making a rook move, checkmate in 2. The idea here, the best move is queen d1, offering a queen exchange. Queen takes queen, you would take with the rook and get out of the bishop's way. And if the queen moves, now we can move the rook without fear of queen f3. We're guarding that square. Anyhow, in the game, bishop g4, looking to get in at a different angle, bishop f3, queen h3, one way or the other. Queen, bishop, on these two squares, queen g2 for mate. What does Fischer do? f4. So this is allowing some lateral defense of the g2 square, even if black has the pieces here somehow. The major pieces can guard g2, now that the pawn is on f4. From here, rook c6. Looking for this stuff. Queen is there, though, to defend. What does Fischer do? Opens it up on the other side of the board. Queenside. This rook is unprotected. Black is still without a flight square. B takes A, rook takes. Rook h6, this is defended. Queen is there. The queen you can rely upon as defense for h2. Can't be distracted. Queen f2 in the game. There is a better continuation. White maintains a small plus and can really build on it with move 26. There is a better move besides queen f2. Computer likes bishop f3, questioning the rook's position on h6. Threat here is f5, and white is close to gaining some control over these very weakened light squares. What am I talking about exactly? Just as an example, if bishop e3, and let's say rook here, f5. The rook is hit, and then rook here. We at least, as white, start to control some light squares. f5, this earlier mentioned duo, is in, and now black has to worry about e6 or f6. There would be absolutely no attack for black if white can establish this position. What happens in the game? Queen f2, bishop f5, white doubles on the a file, and rook to c8. This pawn on a6 is poison. It's attacked twice, defended once, but if you try and pick up the pawn, that would mean what? It would mean white's back rank is vulnerable. So as an example, if white takes like this, in the end, the black queen is going to have some fun combined with the bishop. Queen d1, if the king steps up, there's checks and maybe even a checkmate. And if the queen blocks, we could take the queen and win the rook. a6 is poison. So we have rook b4, preparing to exchange rooks. Rook b6 is the idea. We have that. And queen g4 is doing what exactly? We see soon enough. The h-pawn is now ready to roll. Multi-purpose move here. Flight square and a battering ram. The h-file is soon to be peeled open. White still up a pawn, but black is in the driver's seat here. Even though the engines at this stage say, white is a tiny bit better, this is a position where you would kind of prefer to play as black. Look at the activity. Look at the squares the black pieces are observing in white's house. You can't say the same for the white side. White has the more vulnerable king. That's the bigger factor in this position. King safety is much more important than this material imbalance, this material plus that white has. So what follows? Rook f1, bishop d3. The other rook is ready to make use of that h6 square. And it's going to be that much more effective, especially combined with, of course, you avoid the queen exchange, combined with this h-file being opened up. A rook on h6 now. There's going to be some big trouble for Team White. White tries to run with the king. H-file is now opened up. Black has managed to activate all pieces. Fischer is on his back foot, for sure. Very easy to go wrong. White goes wrong with this next move. Computer suggests c4. Try to undermine the strong post of the bishop. c4 is not played. King d2. Bishop b1. All sorts of stuff to worry about. Queen c2. Rook to one of these two moves. Rook h2 actually is a move because queen c2 and there's a skewer. Very difficult to defend this one. Rook h1 in the game, move 40. And after move 41, rook to f1, this is a position where black is better. Black is actually winning. Black can, at this point, play rook h2. And if the rook is captured, we have queen c2, and then the queen would be won. And if, let's say, rook f2, there's a check, another check, and this queen gets really active. I mean, you could just see that this bishop is just a tall pawn, and all the black pieces are surrounding the white king. g3 is soon to fall, and, well, something like this, black can already do fancy stuff like sacking a bishop, checkmate, next move. Multiple ways to certainly put pressure on white in this position. However, after the move rook f1, according to Frank Brady, what happened next? Euwe offered a draw, and Fischer thought about it for a while and reluctantly accepted, which is, I don't know, it's definitely a very interesting end to this game, because clearly Euwe knew he was either winning better. He can press this position in so many different ways. The material is not a factor here. Black is definitely for choice. Maybe a bit of a courtesy draw offer. Why exactly was Fischer maybe reluctant to accept the draw? Well, on one hand, he knows there's no winning chances here, and the best he could do is a draw. But at the same time, accepting a draw would mean he loses the mini match. You know, he really wants to win, that kind of thought, and there's no, I guess Fischer had no sense of, there was no satisfaction, let's say, with drawing the fifth world champion. He really wanted to win, and he had his chances in this game. I mean, in the opening, the middle game, he was in the driver's seat, and it was only towards the very end that it really started to slip away, and Euwe had this better, or really winning position in the end after this 41st move. Anyhow, feel free to share your thoughts on this interesting game. It is, to me at least, a very interesting game. Feel free, as usual, to leave any comments in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe even took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.